There we go. Welcome, committee. Good afternoon. This November 23rd to 2 p.m. at least, a special General Finance Committee meeting for our 2022 TML operating budget. I want to first call this meeting to order at 2 p.m. I will state that this electronic meeting is being held in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All members are present. I do confirm quorum. None are absent. I will confirm as well the CAO, Clerk, Director of Financial Services, and other members of the senior leadership team and staff are present. There were no public comments received at the township website. Motions have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders to expedite the meeting. And in terms of voting, members shall physically raise their hand until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded by the clerk. This is not considered a recorded vote. There is no supplementary agenda issued for today's meeting. I would ask the committee members for any disclosures of pecuniary interest at this time. Seeing none, thank you. We have no invited delegations. So I'm going to look to suspend the rules of procedure today. I have a motion here moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved that pursuant to section 2.3.2 of the Township's Procedural Bylaw 2019-79 as amended, the rules of procedure are hereby suspended for the duration of the 2022 draft Township Operating and Capital Budget discussion, and that they be reinstated at the conclusion of the discussion. All those in favor? Good, thank you. That's carried. Oh, we crossed that hurdle. Okay, so I think what I'll be referring to initially is item 5B on our agenda today as a continuation of our discussion from November the 4th that afternoon. At that meeting, we directed staff to come back with alternatives to arrive at a potential 5%, 6%, and 7% net levy increase for the 2022 draft operating budget. Staff have circulated a report to committee, and our Director of Financial Services, Mark Donaldson, will now take us through that report. Mark will make his presentation, and then I will provide opportunities for committee questions where appropriate. Mark, over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, committee. So before you is a report outlining the request of the committee from our last meeting on November 4th for staff to bring back options for consideration to reduce the proposed increase in the net levy based on the draft budget presented with new initiatives or a la carte items to a level of 7%, 6%, and 5%. Just to recap, the draft operating budget presented by staff proposed a 4.98% increase in the net levy over the 2021 approved budget levy and was within council's approved guidelines. The draft increase allotted 1.5% approximately to net operating costs to be funded from the levy and 3.5% increase over the 2021 levy related to contributions to reserves amounting to a total contribution of $4 million for 2022. The increase in that draft budget was funded by a 3.46% increase in the tax rate and a forecasted increase in the overall township assessment value of roughly 1.5% based on the latest information from MPAC. The general assessment values for some properties have not changed from the 2016 assessment, which were fully phased in by 2020. But some properties, which have undergone modifications since then, will have been reassessed. This means that the property taxes for a $500,000 property with no change in assessment value would have increased by $21.26 based on the $3.46% rate increase. Those properties that have had an increase in assessment since last year would experience the rate increase along with the assessment increase to arrive at the net levy impact for that property. Comments on the draft budget from the November 3rd and 4th meetings are noted in the report, and those changes will be made. Committee then at that meeting discussed new initiatives that were brought forward based on requests from various committees. And pursuant to that discussion, committee agreed to add 8 of the 11 items put forth. 2 of the 8 approved items were attributed to the township's building department, and therefore their inclusion has no impact on the general levy, but are funded from building permit fees. The remaining 6 items were forecasted to have an expense impact in 2022 of $461,000, thus increasing the draft operating budget net required levy to 8.7% over the 2021 approved budget. Further to those meetings on November 3rd and 4th, Council directed staff to reopen full services at the Bala Solid Ice Service, which were not assumed in the original draft budget, further increased 2022 expenses by $57,700. Staff also noted an omission to salary costs related to part-time staff, which resulted in an additional $11,500. With these updates, the draft budget net levy changed from 5% or 4.98% to 5.5% before the a la carte items, as noted in table 1 of the report, or a 3.99% rate increase, from 8.7% to 9.2%, including a la carte items, as noted in table 5 of the report, which is a 7.58% rate increase. The impact of all these changes since the last meeting are noted in table 7 of the report. At this time, Chair, I'll pause and turn it back to you to confirm that I have captured everything correctly to this point.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Okay, committee, I just want to check in with you. Understanding our mandate today in our session this afternoon is that we move a budget, some sense of a budget that we agreed to here today, that in public input be sought on that 2022 draft operating capital budget and forecast as we finally amend it over these next few hours. So that is our mandate. If everyone is in agreement with where Mark has gone thus far, I'd let him continue. I see Councillor Roberts. Go ahead, and then Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I do have some additions I want to propose for the IT budget, and I'd like to know when would be an appropriate time to raise my suggestions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm supposing we would probably want to go through that green idea, if you will, or that initial thought that Mark would be presenting to us, and then that might be an excellent time to then drop that in there, if that works for you, sir. Okay, good, thank you. Okay, Councillor Hayes, go ahead.
Yes, through you to Mr. Davidson. For the part-time position for bylaw, is that for a second part-time position, or is that for, will that bring them to two full-time and 1 part-time person?
Yeah, I do believe it's a second part-time person. Okay, I'm getting a nodding. So that's, yes. Does that work for you? Is that?
I was under the impression that was for the summer student. I didn't realize it was for a second summer student. So I am not so supportive as I was when we first went through the initial budget. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I could ask others. I'm not seeing any other comments. Does anyone else share that same sentiment on any of those items that you've heard? Mayor Harding, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I guess regarding bylaw, we have 2 full-time, we have 1 seasonal already. This would be for a second seasonal individual. I think we're starting to see the fruits of our labor, so to speak, out of bylaw. And I think I said it last time, I'm not always as big about finding barking dogs as I am about finding inappropriate development. I think we're doing a far better job at that right now. So I would probably support Councillor Hayes' perspective if we wanted to find some additional cuts, that one bylaw, the fourth bylaw person, if you will, could be eliminated. So I think it's overkill.
Thank you for that. So there's a couple of, I see a nodding of heads from another councillor or two. Is this something that we could provide that sense of direction to staff right here and now if there were enough of us to do that? I wonder if I could have sorry, Councillor Bridgman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. I just wanted a clarification on that because I think my understanding of bringing that second seasonal position on was, and it may be Director Pink who needs to answer this, was to actually free up our full-time staff more to work on things like our site plan, like updating our bylaws. Rather than being out, to quote the mayor, chasing dogs. I didn't think we were putting more into that. I thought we were freeing up our full-time staff to do some of the other things that we really feel are important. So maybe Director Pink can answer that for me.
Good, excellent question. So David, if you'd be so kind, sir, I believe it would be in your purview. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee, and through you, Chair. I think my answer would be, it would essentially be both in essence, in that it is a second summer student, so a fourth in total. That is correct to Member Hayes' question, and it would predominantly be doing things such as noise, parking, dog infractions, etc. But in so doing, it would free up some time of the more senior bylaw officer's ability to take on some of those bigger projects and bigger enforcement matters.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Hayes? Okay, so given that, and just prior to the mayor, I wonder if I could see it. I'm not seeing any sort of majority sense that they would like to sacrifice up that bylaw piece. I'm not seeing enough. Mayor Harding, go ahead.
Thank you. And I guess just to Councillor Bridgman's comment and Mr. Pink's comment in particular. So no question that in the summer, our staff have time to do some other bylaw reinvestigation. But I guess the question is right now during the off season, so to speak, I thought that's what they were undergoing. They were looking at reviewing of bylaws. They need to do that. So that was kind of going on between now and May, if I'm not mistaken. In the summertime, yes, they may do some general work, but not so much house cleaning bylaws. We do bring on a seasonal to help with the parking infractions and whatever else is coming on through the summertime because we have more eyes up here. But, you know, I certainly would hope that our two full-time staff are also doing everything throughout the summertime, but you know, their workload through the off season gives them a little bit more latitude to update some of our bylaws. So I think both of those are happening. And again, that's why I would like to see where we net out after a year of 3 bylaw officers, so to speak. We've really increased already. Might just be a bit overkill.
Good, thank you. Councillor Hayes and then Councillor Bridgman again.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary that we vote on whether to have 3 staff or 4 staff at this time. As we go through all of the different options that we have, we can keep this one in mind and discuss it later when we see how much we're adding to the budget.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Good, thank you. Councillor Bridgman and then Councillor Nishkova.
Thanks, Councillor Zavitz. The other part I just wanted to bring up, and I agree, we don't have to decide now, but certainly in my research on the budget, talking to builders and the construction industry, education is like the landscaping industry has no idea of what is allowed and what isn't allowed. So I think my other thought about our permanent officers was to allow them to get out and do some educating to our industries so we don't have infractions going forward that we have to look after. And I don't see anywhere in this budget addressing that at this point. So I'm going to leave that right there for now for discussion later, but it's at the top of my mind.
Yeah, good, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa, go ahead.
Thank you. I would ask the chair, I just want to understand how we're going forward, because much along the line that Councillor Hayes brought up, are we being asked to vote on each issue? And I was concerned because I kind of got the impression that there was a vote, but I didn't take part in a vote. And
Yeah,
we were just talking about the bylaw officer, and so I didn't want it to pass that there was discussion and I didn't take part in it. That wasn't my point at all, but again, I'm a little concerned in bylaw in particular, because we're kind of, a little bit of the conversation was going off into other areas that aren't necessarily, I would say I'm not sure what our role as council is to direct what type of work others are going to do.
good, thank you. Well said. And certainly a discussion at this early juncture, just sort of taking the temperature of committee. If there were things that seemed unanimously, yeah, let's not entertain that any longer. Certainly we would take that low fruit if it were there. That's not to say that's what this is at all. So Councillor Kelly, you had your hand up. If not, you're good. Okay. So I'm going to ask Mark then. Thank you for that committee. And of course, we're going to revisit as we move on. I'm going to ask Mark now to continue this presentation and outline potential options to reduce the levy impact. Mark, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Chair. So staff have laid out two options for revenue increases / cost reductions and use of reserves, which are not mutually exclusive. They have been presented in the report as separate options, but can be proportionally combined as well if it is the desire of committee to use that as in order to arrive at a final result. It's important for committee to be aware that the use of reserves to fund ongoing costs that will continue in future years, such as new positions, will defer the impact on the net levy. As was the direction of the committee, staff looked at potential areas where changes could be made in the draft budget to arrive at a net levy increase of 5%, 6%, and 7%. These areas, or these proposals, were grouped by staff as green, yellow, and red. Before considering these items, committee will also recall that in the report presented in October for the 2020 audited financial statements, that approximately $4 million of the township's $75.4 million accumulated surplus on its balance sheet was unallocated. So just some background, the accumulated surplus of an organization is its net assets. Its assets minus its liabilities. Most of the accumulated surplus, roughly 3/4, relate to the capital assets owned by the township, such as roads and buildings. The remaining balance includes nearly $13 million that is attributed to reserves. But approximately $4 million was noted at the end of 2020 as not having yet been assigned to any reserves. Staff will be bringing forward a future report for committee on the allocation of these funds, but at this time is recommending as a first step to attribute $175,000 to fund the community improvement and climate change reserves approved by this committee. This removes the need for funding of these reserves from the 2020 tax levy. Decisions regarding contributions in future years for these reserves will be considered as part of future budget deliberations. To further reduce the impact on the 2020 net levy, staff have presented a number of options noted as green for consideration, resulting in a reduction of $162,200 in the net required levy in 2022. Of this amount, $105,000 relate to increases in user fee revenues, mostly in planning, with some modest increases in public works for the community centers and arenas, and $57,200 in expense reductions, most notably related to the cancellation of the swim program in 2022, reductions in training and equipment testing in the fire service, and reductions in overtime to be paid out in the year in planning due to the addition of a new staff person and treasury. If implemented, these green options would reduce the net levy by a further 1.3% to a 6.5% increase in the net levy, which is a rate increase of 4.94%, as noted in Table 9 of the report. So at this point, I will, if it will be suitable for the chair, I will put those green options up on the screen so people can see them. And I'll pause and we can have a discussion. Thank you. So on the screen are the 7% or the green options as discussed. They're each itemized here. So the planning revenues, as noted, 85,000. That is due to increases in minor variance, severance, and site plan fees. We do have reduced expenses in planning and treasury, as noted, related to overtime. Some reductions in training and conferences for the fire service, and some changes in terms of communications and equipment testing and equipment emergency management, the swim program cancellation, some increase in the revenues for the community centers, and the Vala and Port Carling Arena related to next season. So the fall of the 2022-2023 season, there would be no change for the current year in terms of the current season, 21-22, and some increase in the health hub rental income to reflect current occupancy.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So I see some hands up. Let's go. Councillor Bridgman, you go first, then the mayor, then Councillor Kelly, then Hayes. So Barb, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair Zavitz. Just a question to you, Mr. Donaldson. In the Treasury, you're reducing overtime. Is that because you're going to be fully staffed this year and you sort of got your new game plan in place? I'm just wondering where that reduction comes from.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So the reduction is something that I think can be managed within Treasury. It's typically time that has been spent in the tax area. The addition of the tax manager position that was approved prior to my arrival in 2020 has been a huge improvement in terms of the tax services. There probably are some areas of times of the year, billings, and getting things out that some overtime may be required, but I think it's something that can be managed with lieu time as opposed to having payouts for overtime.
Okay, thank you. Just one quick comment, Chair Zavitz, and that's strictly about canceling the swim program. That one I'm not sure that I can support because that directly goes for many of our residents who want to use that. So that's just a quick comment now, no decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Mayor Harding, go ahead.
Thank you. My comment was similar to that of Councillor Bridgman's. The swim program in particular. Everything else is an increase in revenues, which I would support. Those people who want to, run planning, who want to do site plans or want to build something, they can pay a little bit more, and I think that's a great opportunity for us. But as soon as we start canceling programs, that really, in my opinion, shouldn't have been in the green. It should probably have been more in a yellow or red. User fees next fall, I don't have any issues with any of that stuff. So I'm really good, and obviously if we've got a new planner, we will see some overtime removals and all that stuff. So I'm totally good with that. The other thing, and just as a comment to the rest of council in this particular, and to Mr. Donaldson, generally speaking, I am not in favor of a rate that would be absorbed by growth, meaning we're at a 7% or 6.5%, but the net impact after growth is in this case 4.94%. Because generally speaking, that means everybody's taxes are still going up, except for the fact that we are experiencing growth year over year. I think we have a bit of an opportunity right now to expand some of our services and not increase some of these fees, in that our taxes are frozen as such. Our growth assessment in all of our properties is frozen. So if my property was valued at $500,000 in 2016, it's still valued at $500,000, assuming I haven't done any work on my property. The only growth that we're experiencing, I think it's 1.5%, is strictly to people like Legacy Cottages, Villas of Muskoka, Touchstone, all of these properties that have been new build develops. Those are the people, if I've expanded my property, they're the ones who are going to be paying the increase in taxes. And I believe rightly so, they should be paying the increase in taxes. And we have an opportunity as such to, we talk about some enhanced services. Now is the time this year. So it's funny, as you get to the green, with the exception of the swim program, we hit our 5% target as far as I'm concerned. And I could stop the report right now, but I'll leave that over to you, Mr. Chair.
Good, thank you. Okay, Councillor Kelly, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, a real quick comment to Director Donaldson. Terrific job on this report, I must say. Easy to read, easy to follow. I have one quick question about the swim program before I make a comment, and that is the swim program cancellation specifically cost takeout, or is it tied to the likelihood that we won't be able to run a swim program given COVID?
Mark?
Thank you for the question. So I will, I'll defer this for confirmation from Director Becking, but I believe this is a cost reduction strategy, not contingent on being able to run it as a result of the pandemic.
Okay, thank you. That having been said, I'm going to agree with Councillor Bridgman and Mayor Harding. I am extraordinarily sensitive to the cancellation or the increase in fee that would be allocated to our permanent residents who use community centers, use arenas year round as a part of a community life. And so the bottom 4 or 5 issues here: cancel swim program, increased fees, community center, Ballot Arena, Port Carling Arena, to me, need to be reconsidered, but I have a lot to say about that when you get to the end of your story. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hayes, go ahead.
Thank you to Councillor Kelly for summarizing my words for me. I too am concerned with the increases for the community center and the arenas. Without knowing what's going to be increased at the community center, if it is the private rentals for parties and they're going up a few dollars, that would not bother me as much as if the everyday community that comes out to use the community center to play cards or darts or exercise, if the onus is on them to start paying, then I would certainly object to it 100%.
Very good, thank you. Okay, I wonder, asking Councillor Roberts, I wonder if we should ask Director Becking to come on and speak to those 1, 2, 3, 4, at least those 4 items, if you might, sir. Just in terms of what would the impact, I guess to Councillor Hayes' question, how would that be felt? How would that reduction be felt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respect to the swim program, it's a intention that it would be a cancellation of expense rather than the alternative that was proposed. With respect to the community centers, we are assuming that in 2022, the budget or the community centers will reopen. We were taking a very conservative view of how utilization will ramp back up to something more akin to normal. In the previous version of the budget that was presented to you, we've kicked it around internally, and staff are of a view that perhaps we may have been overly conservative. That having been said, if we were to get to mid-year and we're unable to achieve these additional revenues, we may have to come back to you and suggest the possibility of rate increases. So it's, if anything, it's a combination of the two are what is being proposed, but we hope to achieve most of it through a return to normal levels that we've seen prior to COVID.
Okay, thank you. As it relates to the community centers in terms of $3,000 spread over how many community centers? Is that all of them? Is that all 10 or 11? Is that kind of a minimal amount if you think about it?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, committee, Councillor Roberts, go ahead. You muted, Gord?
Sorry, I was hitting the wrong button. We're not at enough meetings, I forget. I want to talk more clarification on the reduction on what I see to be the training for fire. And I think the second point is conferences is networking. So it says remove the JHSC committee training. Through you, Chair, to our fire chief. What impact is that? We know the impact on the budget, but to the service.
Ryan? Chief Morrell, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz, through you to Councillor Roberts. The impact of the No Joint Health and Safety Committee training would reduce our bench strength, so to speak. So with the departure of Chief Hayes and Deputy Chief Baranek, we lost two capable people that had the training. Part 1 and Part 2 for joint health and safety is tricky when it comes to the fire service. And we intend on having that bench strength built up in-house. We do have people capable today, myself included, that can sit on that health and safety committee, but it is important to continue to have people invest their time in training in that annually. So we had set aside 3 positions per annum to get trained in that so that we could maintain that specific knowledge that is in the fire service safety field.
Okay, thank you.
Supplemental on that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Just on this one point. So that means right now we currently have only you, Chief, that is certified and trained to perform that function for us?
We have 4 members that are trained at that level, that specific 1 and specific 2. 2 are firefighters, which represents the workers, and myself and the fire prevention officer are trained at that level, representing management. Okay,
and then the second one, the no in-person conferences for the 3 seniors, and that the conferences, is that like you get together with your other colleagues in the fire services and socialize, not really socialize, but network to understand what's working for them and what's not working, etc.?
Yeah, through you, Chair Zavitz, to Councillor Roberts. Yes, that is exactly what those conferences are, and we partake in information, knowledge sharing. We also get new insights about how to explain things to councils, new key performance indicators that councils are looking for, new revenue streams that fire departments can develop. That's actually where the Fire Marquee program came from. We also interact with our counterparts at the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs. And for the fire prevention officer, it's been very valuable for him to find out how to deal with all the different intricacies with, I can't even think of the name of it right now. When you rent somebody's house to stay in over the weekend, there's a lot of changes in enforcement and prevention and education that he gets some insights there. We didn't expect that this next year that they would have in-person meetings, but we are catching wind that maybe towards the later half of 2022, they would start to have conferences again. So we put that on the offer of cuts before we get into the deeper cuts.
Okay, thank you. And just a comment then through you, Chair. I'm comfortable with the removal or the JHSC training. Appears that with minimal risk, we can postpone that 1 more year, but I don't think that we should get out of swimming with the big fish and the knowledge that is offered by experts at these conferences. So right now, I think that's something that should stay in the budget. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, I guess it would be for David, Pink, to just discuss the revenue end of things and increasing our fees. And do we have a comparison of other municipalities? I was just on a conversation this morning with a planner that told me that Muskoka Lakes was the most expensive to do planning in. And so I'm just trying to have an understanding of, and I've always tried to understand all of the expenses, just for the average guy that wants to do the smallest of addition, and he doesn't have to hire a planner, and he doesn't have to hire all of these other things. But I just wanted to have an understanding of where we are in comparison to other municipalities, our local neighbors, I guess.
David?
Thank you, through you. For the purpose of this budget exercise, I didn't do it a comparator to our neighboring municipalities, but the last time we did a fee bylaw update, we did, and I believe we were in the middle to upper end compared to our peers, but certainly not at the highest end in all categories. It was more sort of moderate to the high end. That was in comparison to District of Muskoka municipalities. I haven't done extensive review outside the district, but what I have noted when I do, particularly municipalities south of us, I would say we're significantly below what those municipalities would charge for similar services.
Okay, thank you, David. Councilor Nishikawa, that works for you? Okay, good. See you.
Well, it actually kind of doesn't, but I will just say that, I mean, I just don't know. It's such a large, attractive number, but I'm just trying to have a better understanding of how it impacts, you know, the whole process. You used to be, a number would be thrown around. It's going to cost you $10,000 to get an application moved forward, including building permits and such. And, you know, all of a sudden we're so much higher now. So I'm just trying to have a bigger understanding of all of the expenses to move forward any project in our township. Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. Councillor Edwards, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair Zavich. I was on the same vein as Councillor Roberts. You know, I wouldn't take the training off of the fire department. Health and safety is paramount. So I would leave that in. The same as with the conference. I'd also leave the swim program in at this point. And as long as the increases to the community center and everything else like that is for private rentals rather than citizens using it, I could. I noticed the health hub, the increase in the rental. Are there leases coming due, or do we have long-term leases that we can't bring that up on? But other than that, that's about it for me. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, two quick questions. I think I heard somebody earlier say that if this gets us to 5%, we're good. This only gets us to 7%, as I understand it. And I just want to make sure that I'm not mistaken. And the second thing is, and it's a question for Director Donaldson. As we move to the 6% and then the 5% options, the combination of expense takeout and revenue raise is cumulative, is it not? Each one rolls over and adds another layer. And that's how we're going to get down to 5, I think.
Mark?
Thank you. So I'll answer the second one first. So that's correct. So it is cumulative. So it's assuming all of green is taken. Then when you get to yellow, the rate at yellow is assuming all of yellow is taken with green and so on. To your first point, I just to clarify, because it's taking me some time to get my bearings on some of this complexities of property taxes. But I think the point being made is the net levy is a weighted average percentage increase. So it's a weighted average of the rate and the impact of the assessment growth. We haven't had any general assessment growth from MPAC since 2016. They've deferred that, but there is some for properties that have had changes to it over the last year. So the rate at the 6.5% at the end of green, the net levy increases by 6.5%, which is 5% related to the rate. So anybody who has not had a property assessment change would have a 5% increase strictly related to the rate. The balance of that 1.5% comes from those who have had an assessment adjustment because of construction. And they would pay a combination of both the rate increase and their assessment value increase, which would then get us to the 6.5 net weighted average increase in revenue for the township overall, if that helps. That makes sense.
Just a quick, I understand, just a quick follow-up. If you're like me and you like to look at real dollars instead of percentages, this gets us to the point where the increase in expense versus full year actual 2020 last year is 14.8% year over year by my calculation, which may be rusty, which means it's doubling, the rule of whatever is it, 32 or whatever, doubling of 4.8 years. We're on a track to double expenses in under 5 years. But this only gets us to that first tier of benefit, if you will, because it's a benefit from cost takeout and revenue increase. I think I got it. Okay.
Sorry. So can I ask you to just clarify the question? I'm not sure. I'm not.
Well, no. I think I'm just trying to make sure I understand that for some reason a minute ago I thought I heard somebody suggest that this was it and all, and this got us to 5. This gets us a third of the way, essentially, no matter how we measure it. And it accumulates into the next one. You said that. That's fine. I'm good. Thank you.
Mayor Hardy.
Thank you. And I do appreciate Councillor Kelly's comments. Just to kind of come in from where I'm sitting and my perspective, if you will, on is it a 7%, is it a 6.5%, is it a 9%, whatever the number would be. Generally speaking, I believe our operating expenses have gone up into our base budget at 1.5%. Based on some of these green cuts, they would actually be lower than the 1.5% increase. But council has said we are behind in our reserves over the next 10 years, and we need to significantly increase our contribution to reserves. Hence the reason we have gone up 3.5%, or was the original plan on that to get us to a 5. What we have not factored in is a growth number in new development. Again, as I will say, legacy cottages or touchstone or villas, all of these people who've gone out and built new properties, expanded their own personal value in Muskoka, they theoretically, in my mind, should be paying more than a 5%, and of which they are. So the 6.5, if we were to accept all the green changes as they are, John Doe, pretty much everybody on this Zoom screen who has not changed their property is only paying a 5% increase. Is that correct, Mr. Donaldson? So again, if I haven't touched my property, I'm only going up for my property taxes 5%, which is what I believe our direction was. So that's why I don't think we need to go any further.
Mark?
So thank you, Chair. So that is correct. The rate is going up by 5% at the end of this area. The balance of the 6.5% in total revenue that would be generated from tax levy is coming from growth. Is coming from changes in assessment value over the last year based on the latest information from MPAC.
Okay, Councillor Bridgman and then Councillor Jagwitz.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. Excuse me, I was going to highlight, I think, the same thing that the mayor just highlighted. And that is that in this number is reserves, which have nothing to do with cost of living. It has nothing to do with anything except the fact that we need to up our reserves. So actually, this budget has very little in it. The operating budget has gone up almost nothing. And I commend our staff and you, Director Donaldson, for that. And so to me, the question is, I don't think we can cut any more in our operating budget. I'm already getting all kinds of phone calls like the rest of you that services are not great in the planning and building department, the delays, etc. If we're going to look at something, I think we have to look at that unallocated reserves maybe for this year, or maybe I know one of the options is to reduce it a little bit. I think that's the only place I would be comfortable moving on at this point. Thank you.
Okay, good. If I might ask, Councillor Bridgman, is that with the selection of option, the green option 7%?
Yeah, that is correct. When we get into yellow and red, I would have concerns that we're not going to have any staff left by the end of this because the workload will just be that much more, and our constituents will be that much more upset.
Good, thank you. So we've heard from you, we've heard from the mayor. Okay, Councillor Jagowitz, you go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm comfortable with the green reductions, with the exception of the swim program. I'm just used to that. When municipality of Cambridge that I was involved in, that's always included when you ask staff to do cuts. They always close the swimming pools in the summer or something like that. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. I think we're heading on the right track on this, but I do have to make a comment about those that are saying that we've reached 5%. When we set out on this journey, we authorized a 5% increase in the expenditure side. We did not say a tax increase. So that's false logic in my mind. Also, when you talk about contributing 3.5% more to reserves, we're not putting that money into a bank account and it sits there. We're spending it out the other end. It's because we're building roads and bridges and dams and hopefully some recreational facilities. So if we want to look at that as somehow not an increase, I think that's false, because the only way we can avoid that is to have less costlier capital expenditure, buy cheaper trucks or a few fire trucks or whatever. So I think that's false. So I think we're heading to a 5%, which was our target, and I think we should keep going. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, seeing no other hands, I guess as it relates to the 7% green option, I'm hearing from over here that there seems to be quite a number of people that would not want to see, or they would want to pull the cancellation of the swim program out of this 162, which would drop it down to 41,000. It was 141. Is that a sort of a general census? I can't see everyone here now, but Phil, we got a thumbs up, thumbs up there. Is that, I'm seeing a lot of that, so that if we kept the swim program in and sorry, put it in. So Councillor Roberts, you're saying no? Is that, go ahead. You're muted.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to remind people the point I made about the conferencing for the fire leaders and the benefit that brings. So I'd like to see that go back in.
Fair enough. So sort of a general consensus, I see that we would pull the swim program out of this and maintain that program next year. What about the Councillor Roberts had just said about the fire? Would you have a general feeling of that? Nodding of heads, thumbs up, a couple thumbs up. Councillor Bridgman?
Forgive me, Councillor Zavitz, but I think I was unclear on what you were actually asking about the swim program in the last vote, whether it was to keep it in or keep it out. So could I ask that we redo that vote again?
Sure. I believe the question is, would we remove the, I'm just getting it here. We would not be canceling the swimming program. We would pull that out of the saving of 162, which would move that down to 141,000. Then we'll get, okay, good. And then we'll get our finance manager here to tell us what that means in a minute, once we listen to the mayor. Go ahead, Mayor Harding.
Thank you. And I think, yeah, to your point, I think everyone, if I'm reading the room, that people do want to have a swim program. So let's look at it that way. We want a swim program. And, but regarding the fire department, and again, where our fire chief has provided a cut, I think I also heard the chief make a comment that there are no conferences scheduled at this particular point. So he was putting away a couple $1,000s as a maybe we might have a conference. It might be a say, it might not. So, you know, it might be all for moot, and then we're just taxing people more money. So I don't know, Chief, if what your feeling is. Obviously, you offered that up as a green cut perspective to us, that looking at all things being considered, you know, is it a realistic thing to have a conference? I don't disagree that it's nice to have our staff go away, but it's also nice not to have a 7% budget increase.
Chief Morrell, go ahead, sir.
Through you, Chair Zavitz, to committee and particularly the mayor, we endeavored to control our costs, and I believe that we brought you an operating budget that was less than years past. The specific line item that stands before you that is in question are conferences that help our team get better at their jobs. And they are better for our community because we find new ideas at those conferences. The mayor is correct. There are no in-person conferences that are booked, and the last 2 years there have been none. But I would hate to leave committee with the impression that we offered up these cuts. We were requested to go back and find cuts to take us to 7%.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for that. So Councillor Edwards, go ahead.
Yes, you know, I'd like to go over those one at a time, and that it would be easier. And then adding this, adding that when someone takes out, so we're not in it. And I would leave the fire in, and that if there are conferences, and there's the other $1,500 for, and that we had asked staff to come in with a 5% budget, which they did, and then they asked for the wish list. And I mentioned at that time that in that they shouldn't be cutting on that 5%. They come in at what they wanted, and that in the wish list. Maybe we should go over that again. I don't know. Okay, but yeah, you can always take a road out. You can take this out. You can take that. It's got to be done at some point, so I might as well leave most of that in, as far as I'm concerned. And to take stuff off of the fire department that are mostly volunteer, I do not support. Thank you.
Okay, so didn't really want to go down that road of actually going down the green list and saying yay, nay. We certainly can. I think at the same time, we could also revisit those a la carte items that have been designated as of interest. Mark, is that something you can pull up? I mean, if we were to go back, take a moment, go and look at the a la carte items, you know, potentially there was an a la carte item in there that perhaps people have had a change of heart on. Mayor Harding, go ahead.
Thank you. Maybe, Mr. Chair, that Mr. Donaldson could sort of recalculate quickly by keeping a swim program going. I'm getting a sense, you know, it's $1,500. I think it is for conferences on the fire department. I don't think anyone's going to lose any sleep over that. I'd leave some of the fire department items in there and leave that over to Mr. Donaldson to figure out where we're at the end of the day going forward, because I think it's going to be 7.1%. It's really not material at that point. Thanks.
And you, to your point, sir, not to look at those a la carte items again, not to.
Well, it might be a starting point, if I may, Mr. Chair, to see what number we're at this particular point. I did hear some question, and I'm happy to chime in about the only one a la carte item being that of bylaw enforcement. And there was a question, is bylaw the one who is doing some of the communication about to all of our contractors, or is that actually our new communications officer position, which I believe it is the communications officer, is not really bylaw officer. So, you know, again, I think if there was a potential pause on the a la carte, it would be the bylaw officer, but I'd leave that to you to direct committee's discussion.
Good, thank you. Thank you for that. So, Mark, I'll ask you, I suppose what we've heard here is the fire aspects to it of the 5, and I believe there's a 1,500. I don't have the reference. Okay, Mark's just going to put it back on the screen. And then you could give us a sense of where.
So if we just get confirmation on, I crossed out the swim program.
Right, go ahead with the,
And we are crossing out. Are there any others?
well, it doesn't make sense. No, there are no in-person conferences scheduled. So it's, so I think the JHSC committee training of 1,500, right? Yeah, I'll keep that, yeah. Okay, committees, that pretty much look like what we're sort of landing at. Okay, Councillor Edwards?
At this point, I'd still leave the 5,000 in for conferences. If it's not used, it's just 5,000 found at the end. But and that education is a real asset to any fire department, and that as well as the health and safety. So I personally would leave it in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we would stroke off the 5,000 as well, right? That's right.
So that's, is that?
Yeah, so generally speaking, I believe that's direction of committee. So there's those 3 items, the swim and the 2 fire. Okay, Councillor Roberts, go ahead. Or sorry, Councillor Edwards, sorry. Oh, your hand's down. Okay. Councillor Jagwood, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a little concerned at the way you're going about this. One member said leave something in and you left it in. I don't think that's appropriate. I think if you either go down the list one by one, which I do not favor.
Absolutely fine. We'll go down the list one at a time on the 7%. And seek your indulgence in every one of those, just to make sure everyone is of a mind.
No, I'm comfortable if they're all stay in unless one's raised, and then just deal with the ones that are raised. I don't think you have to go through them all, just the ones. If a member mentions one, then call it.
Okay. So there were 3 very specifically. One was the swim program. There seemed to be unanimity on that.
Yes.
There was the $5,000 fire in-person training, I believe, for 5,000, and you're saying no to that. Councillor Edwards is saying yes to that. So, yeah, again, so it's going to be difficult to find some, unless we just go down the list and do a show of hands on every one, because it's hard to decide who's shaking their head yes, no. Yeah. Okay. Well, and certainly I thought we were. So. Okay, so on the swimming program, I'm going to ask you all, we want to leave that in or take it out? All those in favor of, yep, of
which
we're going to take it out of the green level and keep it intact. Okay. 2, 3. Okay, can you see that? Okay, good. Thank you. The $5,000 fire in-person training. All those wanting to keep it in? Sorry,
If I may, Mr. Chair, if I may, maybe the question specifically, do we want to remove it from the budget, which is the green item? I think might be easier understanding for us whether we're voting in favor of it being removed from the budget or kept in the budget.
Okay, so it would probably be easiest to have the list up and we'll just look at the list. We'll just go down each one. These are the 7% reduction is items that are being put up to be removed, correct? I mean, they're going to be removed from the budget. We're going to cancel a swim program. Now we're saying we're not going to cancel a swim program.
Councillor Zavitz, I think Councillor Nishikawa really wants to speak.
Okay, Councillor Nishikawa, go ahead.
Well, in fact, Councillor Kelly is before me.
Okay.
It's just that the meeting is jumping around all over the place. And in fact, we're being asked to vote on something we haven't had thorough discussion on. And so if I was just looking at the fire training budget and all that, I don't have the information in front of me. And I don't know if other counselors do, and I'm just not on that page of the total fire budget training package, because it's a lot of money. And so I don't think it's really quite correct to look at, you know, taking out $3,000 here without actually looking at the bigger picture. So for instance, we do this often. We go to staff and we say, you know what, the budget, it's just too much money right now. And then we have to rely on staff to bring us information forward that they are comfortable with either losing or gaining. And then, so for us to sort of start saying, well, geez, it would be really nice to make sure that the people got their training in. Well, we're not eliminating other training. Like, I think it's a bigger discussion than just saying, if staff brought it forward, they must have had a comfort level to say that this would actually work to bring the right amount of money to our taxpayers. And again, it is our taxpayers we should be worrying about, not necessarily council and staff. So I want to really focus on what our taxpayers are going to pay, but also knowing what everything else looks like. So as I said, the fire, the training, well, how many other thousands of dollars are involved in training, right? Like you can't just sort of say, oh, geez, this would be a shame because we're not going to give our firefighters training. Well, that's not true. So anyhow, I just, that's what I get frustrated over.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Sorry, and I apologize for being somewhat repetitious, but I need some help here. If I understand what we're doing, and I think that I do, we're trying to get ourselves to the point, and I'm just picking table number 8 on Director Donaldson's table number 8, what's called the 7% option. It's not a reduction of 7%, to my understanding. It's a goal of hitting the increase in the levy to 7%, holding it to 7%. And I'm looking at the top box called expenses, which you'll note is before the bottom third of the page or quarter of the page, which is, somewhere there is transfers to reserve. We're just strictly looking at operating expenses right now.
Yeah.
And a simple piece of paper and a bit of math, which may or may not be correct. If we're looking at 2022 budget at 14,328. That's the goal of this exercise at the 7% option. And simple math says that's $1,375,000 in expenses more next year than we expect to spend this year. And it's $1,850,000 more in expenses we're planning to spend next year than we did last year. Just for context, that's a 10.6% increase over 21, and it's a 14.8% increase over 20. In an environment where people are outraged that inflation has hit 3.1%, we're talking about increasing our expenses by 3 to 4 times that amount. And that's where I'm hung up. Either we've got an incredibly impressive jump in the level of service that we're going to deliver, or new products that we're going to bring into the mix, or I don't understand how we're going to spend all that money or how we're going to justify spending all that money. And that's where I'm stuck. I understand the levy and the 5 and the 4 and the, but at the end of the day, what we're talking about is an organism that moves cash around, takes money in and spends money. And a certain degree of discipline is necessary in controlling the expenditures. And when I see a 10% or 10.5% increase year over year, without a huge increase in the, I won't call it the benefits, but I don't see a big jump in the services to justify a $1,375,000 increase. I get stuck on that. We're worrying about $5,000 and $21,000 for a swimming lessons, which I think are legitimate. But at the end of the day, I'm worried about $1,375,000 year-over-year increase, a 10.6% year-over-year increase in our operating expense. And I'm having a hard time getting past that.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to call on Mark first, and then the CAO would like to comment. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kelly, for the question. And I see the numbers you're looking at. I think in our analysis and the work we've been doing as staff, we've been looking at it on a net basis, so net levies. So that would be on the flip side of that page that you're looking at, where we get to the net required levy after revenues. So table 8 in the report, which is on page 10 of 28 of the PDF, we're looking at it from a net basis where the 13,563,600 reduces to 13,401,400. So on a net basis, with the combination of increase in expense and increase in revenue, decrease in expense, we're able to get to a 6.5% overall net levy increase. And I think to your point about the increase in the gross expenses is what I would call them, I think is what you were looking at. We have to recognize too that as we talked about on November 3rd, insurance is playing a huge part of that driver, and that's something that's not discretionary on the part of the municipality in terms of our ability to control that. So I think there are cost drivers in there that are really driving that in excess of what you would typically see or normally see under regular circumstances. But I think there's pressures and factors in play that are driving our expenses up, that are forcing us to look at new ways of earning funds, revenue on the non-tax revenue and tax revenue side to counterbalance that. So I just wanted to make that point.
And I'll invite the CAO to have a comment.
Mr. Chair, I think, my apologies, Mr. Chair, Mr. Donaldson really hit at what I was going to say. I think there's costs like insurance that are driving up the operating budget. We've got increased contributions to reserves, and council doesn't appear to be very interested in increasing user fees across the board. So therein lies the crunch. And I think Mr. Donaldson articulated it quite well. Thank you.
Thank you. The mayor had a comment.
Thank you. And Director Donaldson answered a lot of it. I guess the only one specific question to Director Donaldson would be, as Councillor Kelly referenced back to 2020, how much additional have we put away into reserves that we were not doing back then? Because I think that's the other portion. You know, we know that insurance has gone up, but we have made a significant investment, and I'll call it an investment, in our reserves as we go forward, as we do a new recreational master plan. We now, again, need to start thinking about where we're spending our money. And that is not going to happen overnight. We're just starting that survey. You know, we talked about financially, it doesn't make sense to run the ballerina, but we saw what happened with the public. So nice to say we're going to try and build everything on a full dollar for dollar business case. Sometimes it's not as easy as that. So I just want to know what additional money we're putting away into reserves.
Go ahead, Mike.
Here.
Okay. So was that sorry, Mayor, was that a question to Mark? It was, correct?
Yeah, it was a question to Mr. Donaldson about how much additional money we're putting away into reserves. I think we're putting roughly about $3 million a year, and I think we've now upped it to $4 million.
Good, thank you. Mark?
Thank you. So thank you, Chair. And Mayor Hardy, you are correct. I believe that in 2021 budget, I think we maintained our level of contribution to reserve as we did in the 2020 budget. So we were in and around that $3.5 million contribution level. I think it was about 3.41 million we contributed in 2020. Again, it went up to about 3.55 last year. And this year we are looking to increase that to 4 million. And again, I go back to my earlier comments with respect to the unallocated portion of our accumulated surplus, which is also there, which needs to be addressed by committee in terms of options that we may wish to further increase our contributions to reserves as well. But we are certainly making huge strides in the short time I've been here to try to adequately fund our reserves to meet our future capital requirements.
Okay, so that gets us back to, I guess, the original mission here, which is to contemplate landing this budget with some sense of cost containment. I know we've had a lot of comment from the committee, good dialogue back and forth. What seemed to me that where we want to get to is where we take a budget out to the public and we seek their consult. I think what happens is we get going and we want to start picking piece by piece by piece. We can certainly do that on green, but then we go to yellow, and then we can go to red, and we can be here for quite some time. I think the report stands, for itself when it says that the green proposals, we know how we feel about them. I think as we go around the table, it would seem to me that the swim program definitely is something we don't want to take to the people and say we're going to cancel it. I don't know. It's what I'm sort of getting a sense from here. So I'm wondering if we could, with your indulgence, if we could simply remove the swim program. The rest of the items, the fire, et cetera, will be going to the public. We're going to see it at least 2 more times in December. So with your indulgence, committee, I would ask that we accept this green level, if you will, with the exception of removing the swim program in terms of the cancellation piece, and then we could move on from there. Would you be in agreement with that? Do I have any sense of agreement? Mayor Harding, I see. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm certainly happy to do that. I did hear a number of councillors talking about one of the small fire related items, but the issue I would face is that when we go to the public and the green is in there, those reductions will be shown as automatic reductions, and they wouldn't have an opportunity to be put back in to the public and to the budget after the public. So I would tend to potentially allow some of, and I've heard some questions about as a placeholder, the fire department in particular, that the $5,000 or $1,500 might sit there. Maybe it's a $3,000 between the two items as a potential. We don't even know if the money is going to be spent, but again, I'm not going to follow my sword for $3,000 on a $13 million budget. So I would leave it at that, and wherever you want to go, I'm in your capable hands.
Good. So your suggestion then, as I'm hearing, would be to leave the 2 fire pieces in the same status as a swim program. Take them out. Good. Okay. Okay, good. All right. So seeking general consensus then, given that we removed the swimming program and the 2, and I don't have the references there. I know one is 5,000 and one is 1,500 for the fire, those 2 fire pieces. Can I seek general agreement here with the committee that we would accept the green piece, asking Mark Donaldson to go ahead and give us an analysis of what that would mean? Maybe take a few minutes and he could come back and tell us that. Okay. Good. Thank you. Okay. Okay, good. He's just going to factor that. And then I guess as I would look to you, committee, obviously we've all done our homework. We've read the report. There's the yellow proposal and of course the red proposal. It would be my thought, and I'm going to ask you here and now, it would be my thought that we would accept the green and essentially stop there. Perhaps get a summary from Mark and then take a check as to where we are. And I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that. Anyone? Yeah, I'm seeing some. Good. Okay, good. Okay. Thank you. So what we'll do is we'll get Mark, you ready? Mark's ready. So
So we are taking out this, swim is out of the 7% list.
right,
The
the two,
safety is out
right,
of the list and the training is out.
Right. that's 6,521. Right. They don't show the percentages on here, just general. There you go. Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Great, thank you. So, so the calculation I have now, we had 13,401,400 as our starting point. We have added back a total of 20. Sorry, just one second. $28,000, which brings us to 13,429,400. That is a 6.7% increase in the net levy, and that translates on a rate to the ratepayer. That is a 5.16% increase in rate, which is equivalent to $31.75 on a $500,000 assessed property.
Thank you. Okay, committee, having heard that, I would ask for comment. I would ask for where you're feeling, what you're feeling right now. We do have consensus, I believe. Go ahead, Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. It would appear to me that by removing the extra seasonal bylaw officer, we're just about going to be back to 5% again. So that's sort of that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, good. Thank you. And we did say we'd revisit that. Any other comments on very specifically on the bylaw enforcement officer? Is that up for some discussion, some negotiation? Wondering how you feel, committee. We've heard from the mayor. Mayor, if I might, sir, I'll just hold you back for just a moment. Councilor Mazan, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you. At our last session, I actually hadn't supported the bylaw officer because I had understood that it was going to be primarily focused on more tickets, noise, dog barking, that type of thing. And I'm still not convinced that that role today is solving the problem that we're trying to solve. So I am supportive of Councillor Hayes' recommendation of perhaps pulling that from this budget and letting the bylaw enforcement team that we now have in place do the work they need to do over the season now and reassess it next summer. So I'm supportive. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Other committee members, what are your thoughts? Mayor Harding's going thumbs up. Okay, I'm going to ask this group. Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. I'm going to ask this group if we would like to remove the seasonal bylaw enforcement officer from the a la carte items here and now. Show of hands, thumbs up. There we go. It's okay. You got it. Okay, good. It's a straw poll. Straw poll. That's good. Thank you. So I'll ask Mark if he would do a further calculation to remove that. Now, Councilor Mazan, go ahead.
Sorry, that's my iPad thumb and now I can't get it down. So, sorry.
The runaway thumb. Thank you. No problem. Okay. So Mark's ready. And so Mark, if you give us a summary of where we are, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And so with that, with the removal of the seasonal bylaw position from the a la cartes, then that reduces our net levy from what I had previously indicated, 13,429,000 to 13,416,800, which is a 6.6% increase in the net operating levy, and comes out to a 5.04% rate increase. And that 5.04% rate, or sorry, 5.06% rate increase. And that is $31.14 increase on a $500,000 assessed property.
Thank you for that, Mark. Okay, committee, you've heard the numbers. Had some good dialogue. We understand where we currently are. This would be where we would move this out to the public on November the 20th it is at 2 o'clock. I'm going to bring something else up in a minute about that, but I do have a resolution here to read. With your indulgence, moved by Councilor Nishikawa, seconded by Councilor Kelly. Be it resolved that the Township of Muskoka Lakes 2022 draft operating budget and forecast attached to the staff report FIN-2021-013 and as amended be endorsed in principle, and the public comment on the 2022 draft operating and capital budget and forecast be sought at a special council meeting scheduled for November 30, 2021. Before I call that vote, Councilor Jagowitz, go ahead. Frank?
Thank you, Chair. Are you not going to finish the report and go through the yellow and red?
Well, if that is the committee's wish, I think I framed it up earlier that having gone through the green and the back and forth on that decision, it would seem redundant to go look for more cuts when staff is I guess we certainly could. I'll ask the mayor to chime in if you'd like.
We want to go through them, that's fine. I can tell you my answer on each and every question will be no. I don't think we need to go any further. I think we now start to really cut into the services that we offer. What I like about this budget is we have an opportunity, again, as Councillor Kelly suggested, we are actually increasing services. We have some issues in our planning department. We're adding a planner. We're doing far better job of communication. Our staff have gone through. They have worked through the numbers. And I certainly believe that 5% net after growth of those new properties, because the general person for the first time or second time, I guess, in forever is not experiencing any growth. And that is a unique characteristic that's going on in this budget. And I think we should be capitalizing on it, because it's not going to happen going forward. And this is the opportunity for us to invest back in the general public. So I'm not in favor of going any deeper in a cut from a yellow or red perspective, because that's really taking down services we offer.
Okay, thank you. And we may do that straw poll in a moment or two before I call that vote. Councillor Roberts, would you like to, you're good? Okay. The only other thing, yeah, you know what? I guess I've called the question. I would ask all those in favor of accepting this budget in principle. Okay, that's carried. 8-2, thank you. All those opposed? 3, good, thank you, thank you. Okay, I guess one thought would be, I've had a number of questions and concerns about the public meeting on the 30th of November at 2 in the afternoon, and I'm being asked to bring this forward, that we'd be a little more sensitive to folks that are working. Many are going back to work with COVID. Might we move that meeting to I don't know, 6:30, 7 o'clock evening start, so that we can capitalize on more of the public being a part of this very vital public process. So I'm sort of wondering, committee, if you'd like to chat about that for just a second, or if we have a thumbs up. Mayor Harding, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Councillor Nishikawa, Councillor Edwards could probably confirm with myself and Councillor Hayes, having sat around this table a long time, whether we hold a meeting at 7 o'clock in person. I agree that we get more people attending, but the fact that people can see the budget online, they can review the stuff, and they can send in comment at this particular point. We probably have on average 3 or 4 people that comment on our budget any given year. And it's all there. We now have YouTube available. They can see what's going on. They can get the PDFs. It's in a far better document. So I'm not worried about holding it at 7 p.m. at night. We don't hold any of our council meetings at 7 p.m. at night, except for the elongated planning meetings. Sorry, Barb.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Anyway,
Councillor
the point that I'm trying to make is people chime in at whatever time it is, as people would be watching today's meeting and will be commenting. The fact is, the in-person comments, people will write us a letter and they read the letter to us on the budget. So whether they read us that letter or submit the letter, it, in my opinion, really doesn't matter, and they can zoom in from their office or wherever they're going to be. Times have changed.
Thanks for that comment. Councillor Nishikawa, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Zavik. The mayor had basically said a lot that I was going to say. And in fact, when we did hold the odd evening meeting, it didn't change the number of people that participated. And we've had them at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we've had them midday. We've had them at night. So I think that what I was going to say is, in fact, that I could not attend that meeting if you were going to change the timing. And that is the issue. If we're going to start changing meetings, most of our schedules are set. In many ways, I look through my December, it's full. So there's not a lot of opportunity to move things around.
Okay, good. Thank you. And thanks for that comment. And again, I'd heard it as chair, I'd heard it from a few of our committee members, and I thought I would bring it forward. I may do a straw poll here and just ask what do people think it's just good to keep it at its particular time now at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm seeing thumbs up, shaking their head. So good. Okay, fine. Thank you for that. We'll keep that meeting at 2 o'clock on November the 30th, that public meeting. I don't think I have anything else to read on it. Are we gonna? No, okay, we don't need it. We don't need that second. There's a second resolution here. But the first one said. Yeah, so it's good, right? Okay, good. Okay, committee, thank you very much for your timing today, and hopefully all your questions have been answered, at least to now. And we'll see you next week at 2 p.m. I'm going to move by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 3:30 p.m. All those in, sorry, Councillor Roberts, you have a question?
Thank you. I must have missed something because for the IT budget.
Well, I was sure before I called that last vote, but listen, I'm happy to give you before we wrap this up. If you want to the floor for a few moments on that, you go right ahead.
Okay, so I'm talking not the operation budget, I'm talking the capital budget.
So,
all right.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
all right, thank you. So I've done some research in the last week or two, or since our last general finance meeting on the IT budget. And so bear with me, and I've got a little bit of something to say here. In 2018, Council decided to move information technology operation services in-house. Unfortunately, due to a few reasons, the primary IT focus since 2018 has been on end user hardware support, network support, and business systems, applications, enhancements, or replacements. Before I go much farther, I just want to remind everyone exactly what's in the proposed 2022 budget for IT. What are the components? They are annual replacements of desktops, laptops, scanners, printers, projectors, and mobile hardware. Completion of the business system improvement projects. There's a lot of projects in there that I assume are going to be done next year. We are buying 4 projectors, one for a meeting room and 3 for a council chamber. We have the council annual IT compensation. We have IT insurance. We have a very small professional services budget in there. We have software licensing fees. We have one of the biggest things we have there is the first and second level support for desktops, laptops, and networks. We have mobility services, internet connectivity, minor IT repairs, and of course, contribution to the reserve. Not included in the proposed IT 10-year capital budget or any budget are funds to improve and modernize our IT environment. Produce an implementation plan with estimated costs for key recommendations of the IT strategic plan. You'll recall at the last general finance, we approved that we get staff to do that and come back. Not in the budget is investigation, recommendation, actions to address any gaps, risks, or shortfalls identified in the strategic plan. Not included in the budget is to engage an expert. We have nobody in the township who are experts to recommend and implement improvements to our IT environment. And not in the budget, something we haven't had for 3 years, and it's been bounced around between senior management, is any IT resources. And I'm not proposing that we hire permanent IT resources for next year. I recognize that it will take the township considerable time and effort to investigate and recommend actions to address what was identified in the IT strategic plan, but I believe it is incumbent on each of us to at least put ballpark estimates in the budget. There are no ballpark estimates to do any improvement. When Director Becking had a road he had to know he had to get in, he put it in the budget. And then you got to do the same thing for IT. It's got to be, we got to stop having it as an afterthought. The IT strategic plan revealed concerns, and underline the word concerns, with some major infrastructure pieces. At the top of the 22 IT priority list that I'm proposing we put in must be activities that ensure that our key IT elements, such as email, this thing that everyone uses, server infrastructure, network connectivity, stay operational until we do something. But the IT strategic plan says we haven't been doing that. I highly recommend that the 2022 budget includes funding to immediately engage contracted, restate contracted experts, IP experts, to do 7 critical things. 1, and I think everyone's going to agree with this first one, complete and test server recovery plan. This is our number 1 priority. If our servers go down today, we have no plan to how to recover them. And if we had a plan, we haven't tested it. Number 2, examine the email system to ensure that any outage can quickly be resolved. After reading the IT strategic plan, it had one line in it that referred to emails. And it was like, it's done off site. I didn't know whether that was a positive or a negative. If we lose our email, we're totally out of business. So we need to get an expert in there to evaluate that. And we got to assess and fine tune where necessary the network infrastructure, hardware and software as well. have this person recommend solutions that ensure quick resolution of a network outage. So if the network goes out, where do we turn? Number 4, identify critical single points of failure components and recommend a contingency plan. So very simply, we lose a server, totally pooch for some reason. How long do you think it'll take us to get a server in if we had a recovery plan? And if the server's down, the township operations are down. We haven't, I don't know whether we've applied all the necessary server updates and patches. So that'd be number 5, get someone to do that. Number 6, review and adjust where needed the network firewalls and township cybersecurity process and procedures. The IT strategic plan had a lot on cybersecurity, a lot. Maybe all of it doesn't need to be done, but heck, you know, we should be having an expert in and taking a look at this. So those are the top 6, just from an operational point of view, that we should have money in the 2022 budget. And then finally, number 7, throughout the report, the Blackline Consulting said we had no expertise in IT in the township. And that's, I think everyone's going to nod their head on that one. So what we need to do, we need to immediately engage a contracted information technology expert to recommend and implement IT changes, which will significantly improve operational discipline, accountability, and facilitate ongoing efforts to apply industry accepted best practices. I recommend that we would start this process with a request for information and not an RFP. So I'm asking the committee to give serious conditions to these, what I think are mandatory things that we need to do in 2022. I will close in saying that I believe that with $1 million in the IT reserve budget, after taking out the 186,000 or whatever for 2022, we should use that budget to beef up 2022 so we can address these recommendations. Your thoughts? Thank you.
Thank you for framing that up. I'm going to asking the committee, I see some hands up. I do know that both our Director of Finance and certainly our CAO want to comment, and I think we should probably let them, because I think they would then position it and answer some of your questions, and then of course to the mayor and to Councillor Edwards. So I'm going to ask Derek Hammond to come on first. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I firstly want to thank Councillor Roberts for his thoughtfulness with respect to going through the Blackline report. It's clearly evident to me that he has considerable experience in the IT area. And so I want to take committee back to our last General and Finance Committee meeting when committee received the report. Staff identified a plan of action. I recall Mr. Donaldson speaking to the fact that, yes, we understand the recommendations in the report, and we are actively seeking through a request for proposals a service provider. We plan on working with that service provider to put a plan together and come back to committee and council with respect to use of the IT reserve on a prioritized basis, identifying the projects that we need to get onto now. And so our IT system is working. We had a slight glitch today. We recovered quickly through with the help of Near North. And so we are reestablishing the internal knowledge that we need to with respect to our IT systems. So we do have a plan. We are going to execute the plan, and we're going to get there. Like with most problems that we've encountered during our journey together over the last couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And just to add to Mr. Hammond's comments, I think that to the point that the councillor made with regard to in-house expertise. I for sure would never classify myself as an IT expert in any realm. So I certainly am dependent upon those who are much more knowledgeable. And I think we are going to see some opportunities as we do this RFP and work with the contracted service provider next year. As council knows, our contract with Near North is reaching its expiration at the end of this year, and that's why we had to go out for tender. And I agree with the councillor in terms of being able to utilize the reserve money that is there to be able to facilitate many of these items that need to be addressed. The low-hanging fruit are the easy ones. We'll get to those as soon as we can, and I think that we certainly recognize, no one more so than I do, that there is work to be done, and we will definitely be bringing a report forward to committee and council in the first half of 2022. The earlier the better, but as soon as possible, to outline what our plan is, kind of short, medium, and long term, what those costs would be, or those estimate of costs at that time when we have a better idea of what we're going to attack and when we're going to attack it. And then we can move forward from there. And I think that would be the plan that I kind of foresee happening over the next 3 or 4 months. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Now I'm going to allow Councillor Roberts a supplemental, just because he's hot on the topic and he's right here engaged with these two gentlemen on the other side. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead. And then there's 4 hands up, so there's lots to talk about. Thank you. Go ahead, Gord. Gord, you're muted.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I looked at the RFP for it refers to the IT managed services, and there was 5 requirements for the RFP. Ongoing tier 1-3 help desk to end users relating to township systems, hardware, services. So the focus is on the end user, not the infrastructure. Manage users, again, the end user, account creation, deletion, configuration, and associated security for the end user. Provide ongoing system administration for township servers, applications, systems, firewalls, network, and internet connections. This is good. That is now we're into the infrastructure. Manage cybersecurity through firewalls and access controls. This is good as well, because those were 2 of the requirements I listed. But it can't be halfway through the year. Criminals and cybercrime people don't wait for halfway through the year. They're looking at it right now. We are small potatoes. So the likelihood of us being attacked is probably low, but it's there. So you can't ignore those things right now. Our servers could go down at any time. So you got to do it now. So you're going to get the RFP signed, but before you do a thing, they should be doing the work on the servers and the work on our security. And finally, this catch-all statement, and I think we're putting all our bags in one basket with function as a township infrastructure manager, i.e. we don't know much, so why don't you tell us to provide consultation and recommendations on required upgrades and projects. It's much bigger than that. We don't have a foundation. We shouldn't be upgrading the stuff that we have now. We need to build a foundation. The projects we have, yes, it's going to take us halfway through the year. We'll be a lame duck council by 2/3 into the council next year, and we won't get anything done until 2023. I don't think we can afford to wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Good words. So Mayor Harding, and then we'll move on from there. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. CEO Hammond and also Director Donaldson both said clearly you understand more than all of us combined in this field. But I do have to say what I appreciate is we have money in reserves to be able to pay for this infrastructure, whatever it may look like. We know that cybersecurity and infrastructure is a moving target. As you say, I mean, what happened last year is different than this year. Our computers that we bought 2 years ago are probably already out of date. Any servers around the world, no matter how big and how robust, if you remember about 3 months ago, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those crashed and went down and everybody was freaking out, whatever. So if those largest servers in the world at times will go down, ours may as well. So I guess what I just want to make a commitment or make sure, and I think I've heard that from Director Donaldson and their CAO, but certainly wouldn't want to go into lame duck before we can do anything. If we have money in our reserves, if the results of an RFP come back first quarter, that we make it a priority and we don't get into May and June and July, that in first quarter of 2022, that this council deals with it. I mean, I appreciate that we are, call it a sitting duck, that cybersecurity could be coming after us. The reality is we've been this way for the past 4 years, 5 years with this current provider. And we were even worse off prior to that. So never say never. We can always do a better job, but I think doing it in the proper fashion with a new provider under the RFP is the appropriate course, assuming we're going to deal with this in first quarter. So that's the only thing I need to hear from CIO and Director Donaldson, that this is a priority for first quarter.
Good, thank you. And we'll let this discussion be somewhat organic. So we'll come back to the CAO and Mark in a moment. So Councillor Edwards, you go ahead, and then Councillor Bridgman, and then Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Chair Savage. I think while we're looking into this, maybe we should be looking at what the district's doing right now. We were with the district. Yeah, we could save some money, but maybe we didn't have the firewalls and everything else like that we should have had. And that it may be and that better going with them. I think we should check those systems out and not get somebody that knows systems to look at everything. So you know, compare apples to apples. Maybe it wasn't a huge savings that we got because maybe we gave a lot of stuff up that we didn't know we were giving up at that time. So it's just a thought, but I think we should be looking into it and talking to the district to see what their program is and that compared to outside providers. Thank you.
Good, thank you for that. Councillor Bridgman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. I will tell you my major concern here. I mean, I'm glad we're moving forward, but we're hiring a provider to do the analysis, and they're in business for themselves. And we don't have any expert here to be able to go through that and decide whether it's good advice or bad advice or it's geared to their bottom line. So I honestly believe that we should be looking for a proposal from an IT expert, independent, to be able to give us all that information and then move forward. To your point, Councillor Edwards, they'd be able to look at the district system and say, what's good, what isn't. So quite honestly, I don't want to go to a provider that's in it for the bottom line. I would like to see us go to some sort of a consulting company that's well known here and can give us the whole game plan. So that's my concern.
Good, thank you. Well said. Okay, Councillor Hayes.
Okay, through you. The Blackline report looked at the operating systems and the internet that we have now. It touched on software and some applications. It did not address the platform that the applications run on, nor did it really address any interfacing that was needed between systems. We've talked about opening up our systems for automatic forms and payments. We should probably be looking at a third party for that, for enhanced firewall protection. I think that you'll find out in the system, as Councillor Bridgman suggested, you will find experts on operating systems. You will find experts on interfacing and intranets and networking, and you'll find cyber experts and you'll find software experts, but I doubt very much that you're going to find one expert that does it all. So you'll probably be looking at getting information from a lot of different things and having someone to go through it at your end to look through it. We'll probably be looking at more than one consultant, I would think. And as per Councillor Edwards' recommendation, I have no problem with us looking everywhere, not to disavow someone just because we've looked at them before.
Okay, good. Thank you. Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you. just want to confirm with staff that you've heard quite a lot of feedback in detail. Clearly, we just received this report. This budget is going to give you the flexibility to act quickly. Is that correct? Again, some of the feedback that you've heard, or no?
Mark, go ahead.
Will we be able to, so you've heard some feedback for today. Clearly, this isn't the day where we're going to make a decision on the path forward yet for IT. But given some of the feedback that you've received thus far, does the budget as it stands today give our council the opportunity to release funds, I guess, to act on our IT?
Thank you, Chair. And so I think to answer that question and touch on something that Mayor Harding had also mentioned on, so we've definitely identified this as a priority. That's why we wanted to bring the report forward as quickly as possible. We are doing the RFP as well, as mentioned. We'll work as diligently as possible to bring a report forward for committee and council to make those decisions, particularly regarding things that are going to be done within the 12-month span. The things that are more longer term, we'll certainly have better information to be able to include in next year's budget to be able to plan for those in the medium and long term. So to your point about having an opportunity to make that decision, yes, we'll be bringing a report forward. It will be, I will say, in the first half of 2022. I will endeavor to try to make it as soon as possible. If I can hit Q1, all the better. I don't want to commit to something I won't be able to attain, but I think it's definitely something that it's a high priority for us to ensure that we are in a good position with a carrier. And I just want to assure committee and council, it's not that we don't have any protection or any security or any firewalls or anything. We do. We have operating systems now. We just want to have an opportunity to look at them and see where we can plug any holes, plug any gaps. Some of the items that Councillor Roberts mentioned that are in the RFP are currently gaps that we have. Our current service provider is not contracted to provide tier 1 support to our staff. So when staff have a problem, they have been going to our service provider, but that's not within the scope of that contract. And I think that was outlined in the report. So I think what we're trying to do is ensure that we've got a properly fitted scope of a contract with an external provider to ensure that we have the level of service that we need.
So I think just a quick supplemental, we do have access to the funds in the budget. And the path forward is that at some point in hopefully the near future, staff will be coming back with a staff report as to what the path forward is. Having listened to some of the feedback, and I would say from people who have more experience than I do in the IT world, I have IT experience as a user, but not in the back end as I think some of my colleagues do. So thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Jagowitz, and then we'll wrap that up.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make one comment, and that is that we can always make a budget amendment. That's something that happens all the time at the district. And my suggestion would be that we should have a formal process for that. And this could be the first item that if staff requires some funding to get this moving, they would come forward with a budget amendment and in that make a suggestion as to how to fund it, whether it comes out of reserves or whether it's whatever it is. So I think that Councillor Mesden, that might satisfy you that we're not, that would satisfy me anyway.
Good. Thank you, sir, for that. Councillor Edwards, go ahead.
All I can say, and that to the chair, is if we do go into a lame duck, it's basically at that nomination day. So, you know, we should have something in place so that we don't get caught on that, as Councillor Roberts said. That's the only comment I have. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And I think to summarize, you know, as we have done in the past, when topics of terrific concern arise like COVID, and this township did establish through the mayor a communications team. I thank them for that. I'm wondering if Councillor Roberts, not to put him on the spot, but if there's a way for him to be our sort of Minuteman representative, if you will, perhaps with our, and this is news to them, but, you know, to our our finance group to work with them if you have the time and indulgence to perhaps provide not so much your expertise, but an extra pair of eyes and obviously bringing the intensity to this thing. Is that something that you would be willing to do, sir, as in terms of an entity that might weigh in on that and chime in when to get us further down that road? And if that is the case, and we don't have to, I'm not looking for a commitment from you today, but if that is to be the case, then I'm seeing Mark making lots of notes, and that could get us down that road. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, definitely I would, but I would also want Councillor Hayes, who has performed the job at the district in the operations of, so I would want her involved as well. And between the two of us, we could help give insight. And I can see Director Hammond kind of cringing a bit, but we'd be respectful, honest.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And so to Councillor Hayes' point, I'm not saying she's saying yes or no, but I guess my point is taking that under advisement here and now in this meeting, and let's see what can develop from that. I mean, it just seems like there's an opportunity here. Mayor Harding, and then we'll wrap it up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think the reality is we have a number of resources on this council that will be able to help this going forward. Let's let the process take place. First of all, we'll issue the RFP, get that back, and we continue to move forward. Councillor Roberts certainly will be offering his opinion. We know that, and which is most welcome. And so will Councillor Hayes. So whether it's formal or informal at this particular point, let's move forward with this. We know, and staff know, that we will not let us go into lame duck, so that we will be able to address these issues. But I think, as Mr. Donaldson said, that we are currently protected. We do have firewalls. We do have a number of things. Are there other levels of enhanced security? Absolutely. But let's move this forward. And I think you have one final raise your hand, and then we can all go home. I've already called the question officially.
We'll give you the last word. And in fact, I'm going to have to read a resolution first, which is moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that the Township of Muskoka Lakes 2022 draft capital budget and forecast attached to the staff report FIN 2021-013 and as amended be endorsed in principle. All those in favor? That's carried. All those opposed? I didn't see Councilor Nishikawa's hand up. Okay. Good. Okay, thank you. Okay, it's 3:57, moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 3:57 p.m. Thank you, committee. All those in favor? Good, thank you. It's carried. Okay, see you next week. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. Cheers.